So what happens when the chairman of a country's largest private bank just quits? And not quietly, but because of a crisis of personal values. Well, it's more than just a headline. It's a massive test for the entire institution. Today, we're going to break down HDFC Bank's urgent investor call to see exactly how they managed the chaos. We're looking at their crisis playbook and figuring out who's really in charge.
I mean, think about it. This was the question that sent shockwaves through the market. A statement like that, it isn't just about one guy leaving his job. It immediately makes you question everything: the bank's culture, its decisions, the integrity of the whole leadership team. The board had to go into damage control, and they had to do it fast.
And this, right here, is the heart of the matter. You see, in the world of corporate governance, words are chosen very carefully. People usually leave for personal reasons, right? That's standard. But saying something is not in congruence with personal values and ethics? Whoa. For any analyst, for any investor, that is a massive red flag. It screams that there was a major, unresolved conflict at the very top.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the shock exit itself, then we'll dive into the board's lightning-fast reaction, we'll look at how they handled the really tough questions, how they tried to defend their own governance, and finally, what they say is the path forward from here. First up, let's talk about the event that kicked this whole thing off. Now, this wasn't some planned retirement with a nice, smooth handover. Nope. This was an abrupt departure that created a huge information vacuum. And you know what happens then? The market rushes in to fill it with all the worst-case scenarios.
So here are the hard facts. The resignation of Chairman Atanu Chakrabarty, well, it didn't land in a quiet press release. Get this. It was handed in during a scheduled board meeting. Now, that move suggests something happened suddenly, a final straw, rather than some issue that had been brewing for months. And we're back to that incredibly loaded phrase. This wasn't a vague, "I'm leaving for new opportunities." No, this was a direct comment on principles. And that is exactly why it triggered such an immediate and, frankly, aggressive response from the bank.
Okay, so with investor confidence totally on the line, the board's next few moves were absolutely critical. Their strategy was pretty clear: project stability, project control, and show everyone that the institution was stronger than this one event.
Just look at this timeline for a second. The speed here is the story. The resignation happens, the board immediately gets on the phone with the central bank, the RBI, and an interim replacement gets approved that very same night. That's not just fast, that's a calculated message to the market that the institution is in control and, importantly, has the full backing of its regulator. And who they picked? Well, that was just as strategic. Keki Mistry is an HDFC veteran, a known quantity, a safe pair of hands. Appointing him wasn't just about filling a chair, it was about installing a symbol of stability. And that 3-month term, that signals this is a temporary fix, not a rushed, permanent decision. The sun is barely up the next morning and boom, the board is on an emergency call with investors and analysts. This was their first and probably their most important chance to grab the steering wheel, control the narrative, and shut down all the speculation. And this was the elephant in the room. The big fear from investors was that this resignation was just the tip of the iceberg, a sign of some deep conflict at the top, maybe between the chairman and the CEO, something that could derail the entire company. And the new interim chairman's response? Wow, it was a masterclass in absolute denial. Notice the repetition: no power struggle, absolutely nothing. That's not a casual comment. That's a carefully crafted message designed to slam the door shut on any ambiguity. And you can see their strategy laid out perfectly right here. For every single rumor, they had a counterpunch ready. People worried about friction in the management team, they shot back with complete and absolute unity. Speculation about tension between the CEO and his deputy, they didn't just deny it. They announced the deputy was getting more responsibility. They were basically going down a checklist and dismantling the rumors one by one. Okay, but wait a second. Their total denial created a brand new puzzle. If there was no conflict and everyone was getting along great, then the chairman's really strongly worded resignation just made even less sense. The official story just wasn't adding up. So what was their answer? Well, they claimed they were just as confused as everyone else. According to Director Renu Karnad, they pushed him for a reason and got nothing. By saying, "Hey, we're baffled too," they were trying to build a wall between the institution itself and the chairman's personal and apparently very private motivations. So, with the why of the resignation pretty much off the table, the board pulled a classic move. They pivoted. They shifted the whole conversation away from the actions of one person and onto the strength of the bank's systems and processes. The new message was clear. Our governance is strong enough to handle anything. So the board shifted from why did he leave to how we handle things here. The head of the governance committee basically laid out their rulebook with this 3-step process. Their point was simple. We have a rock-solid system for looking into every single complaint, even anonymous ones. The subtext here is, hey, if there was a real fire, our smoke detectors would have gone off. And then came this. This was maybe their most powerful move of the whole call. The new interim chairman, Keki Mistry, basically put his entire 40-year reputation on the line for the bank's integrity. It's a personal guarantee, and it was designed to be the ultimate anchor for investors' trust. All right, so they've put out the immediate fire. The final part of the call was all about looking ahead, reassuring everyone that this was just a temporary blip on the radar, not a fundamental change in direction for the bank. And here was their roadmap to get back to normal. First, Keki Mistry is in the chair for 3 months, just to steady the ship. Then, the board is going to start a proper search for new permanent chairman. They also signaled that the CEO is staying put, and most importantly, the bank's actual strategy and growth plans, totally unchanged, business as usual. And to wrap it all up, the CEO, Sashidhar Jagdishan, closed with this really powerful forward-looking statement. He didn't just promise future growth, he cleverly reframed the whole situation, suggesting that this new cohesiveness on the board is actually going to be a net positive for the bank's future. It was a pretty slick move. So, when you boil it all down, the message from this crisis response is crystal clear. HDFC Bank is making one big argument. Our systems, our governance, our institution, it's all more important than any one person. They're asking the market to bet on the bank itself, not on who's sitting in the chairman's office. But, and this is the big but, despite all the swift action and all the confident talk, the original mystery of the chairman's baffling resignation is still just hanging there, unsolved. And that leaves the final, critical question in the air. For a business that's literally built on trust, is the strength of the system enough to make up for the big, unanswered questions about its leadership? Well, that's what the market is going to have to decide.